Hey everyone, I'm Jay.
Fuck this shit, I'm Sophia.
And I'm Scott. Welcome to Witches Betwixt.
Welcome to Fuck This. Actually, welcome to Ding Dong Rush Limbaugh's Dead.
Yeah, eat shit
Yay.
from a grave. Drink
Yeah.
my piss, you son of a bitch.
Damn, I like it. I like it.
There's
Coming in hot today.
Fucking.
no capitalist like a dead capitalist.
Honestly, Sophia, I kind of feel that because I also feel like I'm also kind of running hot in a way too. Like, I have just been so over it. And whatever it is, just I guess it's kind of like gestures vaguely,
Like Trump got acquitted. It's Mercury and Gatorade. I didn't even get a full shift worth of work today, even though I did get paid for it. I don't got work tomorrow. I want to throw rocks at the sky and say "fuck off, space egg." That's what I want to do.
Yeah, let's curse the moon or hex the moon.
No. There's a difference between throwing rocks at the moon and saying "fuck off, space egg" and actually laying hands on the moon. You know.
No, I was thinking of all those TikTok witches when they were gonna curse the moon or some shit.
Don't
man.
even try. Moon's got hands. She'll fucking crack you right upside the head if you try.
Right. Today's general topic, as they are usually a loose general topic with lots of tangents and side conversations, as we do here. So today we're kind of talking about I don't want to say, I guess, yeah, just the difference or the similarities. We're talking about urban magic and rural magic. And the word rural feels very, like, hard to say. Rural. I feel like I'm like,
it sounds like Scooby-Doo. Rural.
Rural Raggy.
Yeah, it does roll off the tongue weird.
Alright, who's Shaggy in the group? Is it Sophia? I feel like it's Sophia.
Oh, no, first off.
Well, you're the biggest stoner, so I feel like that automatically makes you Shaggy.
I mean, yes, but also, I'm Velma, too.
Oh, you are very Velma. That is very true. That is very true.
I'm very much like the girl who will just, like, fight the fucking monster. And I'm like Velma and Scooby. Actually, no, I mixed up Daphne and Velma. Whatever. You know what? I'm not a Scooby-Doo girl. I'm something altogether different. Maybe I'm Scooby-Doo. Actually, I'm probably Scooby-Doo.
Oh shit. So yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about today. And what's really cool about this is that, Sophia, you've kind of lived both experiences, which is, I think you're gonna have a lot to bring to this discussion. I'm really excited about that.
Tell me about it, bud. Fucking tell me about it.
But while we're on the subject of urban cities and shit like that, fucking Philly, man.
Holy shit.
I love this fucking city so much, and yet I hate it so deeply all at the same time.
Yep.
I mean, like, in terms of, like, our political leanings, totally liberal, right? We as a city 95% voted Biden for the last election and shit. So, like,
also thank you.
Yes, not a problem. I would gladly do it again. But yeah, like, Philly, in all of its, liberal blueness, whatever you want to fucking call it, is also a massive shit stain. I can't fucking handle it sometimes. The hoops that I have been jumping through to get on a fucking wait list to get a fucking vaccine is abysmal. It's bad. It's just so fucking bad. And I know this isn't just limited to just Philly. Trust me, I know it's not limited to just Philly. And I'm sure Philly is probably, much further along than maybe some other cities and other places in the world. But, fuck. It's been
You totally accidentally just said butt fuck.
I did just say butt fuck.
Good night, everyone.
And that's the episode. Butt fuck. Fucking God. Oh, not to mention, just like the city itself is fucking falling apart and it's a mess and it's we're being overpriced out of it. Like, I can't even live in this city for the rest of my life. I have to go move to Delaware just to afford a life.
I mean,
maybe we can do a commune in Milwaukee, or like live under a bridge, and we won't pay rent. We can just like collectively hunt squirrels and raccoons for a living.
Honestly, like me and Scott have talked about like commune-esque style living for years now.
Yeah.
We're like, let's just buy a plot of land and
Yep.
go for it.
It's so weird because I came back today. There was an article that someone shared. This family, what they did, they have like a teenage daughter, a teenage son, and obviously them, and they ended up buying a plot of land and they built tiny homes, and their teenagers have
Mhm.
their own little tiny home, and they have theirs.
Hot take: land is stolen. Don't pay the colonizers for it.
That is also true, and that is
That is
something
true.
that has always bothered me, like
Mhm.
just from the get go as a kid, because like
Me
you're
too.
like you're learning about the Earth and like this is the Earth, and it's been here bazillions of years before humans even fucking got here, and
How come this prick owns it? Right.
right, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this patch of dirt is my patch of dirt, and it's worth this many fucking seashells, or whatever, and it's
They
like, well,
fucking subdivide, man.
yeah, and it's fucking bullshit.
Condos, I tell ya. We have enough housing to put every human being on the planet into a fucking house. But people just kind of conveniently ignore that figure because money, economy, gambling. What is the reckless abandon and waste that is the human lives that get crushed in the mechanism of society that just thirsts for our blood? Now, fuck everybody. Let's just monopoly.
And
That's life.
also, fuck capitalism. While we're at it, just drop
Mhm.
in a fuck capitalism.
Yeah, okay, so good night, everyone. We've hit
Yeah.
all our check boxes.
Yep. Fuck capitalism. Let's start a commune. Was that be gay, do crimes, and butt fuck? There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oof. It's
They
it's
don't
just
know
it's
we're not
been
having a happy day.
no. It's just been a fucking. I don't even want to say it's been a fucking day. It's just been like a fucking existence.
It's been a Gatorade. It's been a real Mercury Gatorade.
Yeah. The Gatorade has not been very thirst quenching.
Mm.
It's
No.
like so thick you can chew it,
Yeah,
man.
like they really fucked
Ew,
up this batch.
ew.
Oh,
Uh,
That's true. I
so
actually didn't
I,
even realize it was a
I guess
Gatorade.
we could segue towards the
yeah,
general
I mean,
topic.
we actually kind of touched on some things already of, actually some of the, I guess the negative aspects to urban life and urban living, like how people kind of just get shuffled along in the mix. Um, I'm trying to think about how I want to start this off. I think I'm just going to start this off by my own experience with urban magic because I was really fucking excited when Sophia, when you mentioned this as a topic,
Yeah.
because I recently saw a post. I can't remember if it was Twitter or Facebook. I don't know. They're all the same to me at this point. Um, and it was something about like it was like a shout out to urban witches, and it was like to the kids that found magic, in the weeds, growing through the
Oh yeah.
cracks, and
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And what really struck me with it was they said that you found magic in the place where they tell you that magic goes to die. And I feel like that's really true. I feel like just in the city, like the city, it's always this feeling of, I don't know, progress and moving forward, constant motion, right? It's just this feeling of constant motion, constant doing, just constant. It never stops.
Capital.
Yeah, like it never stops. Um and some cities are more quiet than others. Like I've been to Pittsburgh. That's another, big city in Pennsylvania on the other side of the state. And Pittsburgh nightlife, it's more low key than Philly. A lot of places close early and stuff like that. In that particular pocket, like their little main downtown area. Um but there is still a sense of there's always someone around. There's always someone out. There's always someone out doing something. There's just always something fucking happening in a city. And which is great, but also a lot to handle at the same time. And sometimes it's not good, because I feel like a lot of times when you grow up in a city, you're constantly um you're constantly suffocated by it in a way because it's you get lost in the shuffle. You're just another body on the train. You're just another
Mm-hmm.
figure waiting for a bus. You're just another face in line at the coffee shop, and there's not a lot of you don't get chances to, I don't know, I guess, set roots down in a city all the time because you're constantly in motion.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you live in a city, like grow up, born and raised in a city, I still feel like it's still really hard to put actual roots down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just it's the nature of the city. It's very resistant to that. So urban magic is incredibly fickle. It's like one of the more tedious magics. It almost reminds me of like what is it in D&D, the class that sometimes wild magic can happen. Like you cast a
Oh, the wild
spell,
sorcerer. Mm-hmm.
wild sorcerer, yeah.
Also, there's a barbarian class that does that too.
Now,
Really?
yeah. Now,
Huh.
now it's yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of because you could do some kind of working in a city, right? You're doing a ritual in a public space. Um, but there are so many outside forces and energy and spirits and just it's so busy that
Mm-hmm.
there is always that chance of that wild unknown element, creeping its way into your working or your spell. No matter how much you ward, cleanse, protect, there's always it's just there. It's just you can't get away from it. And what's interesting to me is someone who has been born and raised in a city, and I love my, and we were just talking about this before we started recording. I love my city so much, and yet I sometimes, like, at this point in my life, I feel very suffocated by it. Uh I feel like I need a break from the city.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that I'm gonna go move out into some like remote cabin in the woods situation, because I don't think that would also vibe with me for like a permanent living situation. But I do want to kind of get away from the main hustle and bustle of a
Hmm.
city, just because I feel like my own brain is already loud and busy and constantly in motion,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm ready to kind of give myself the space to quiet down my space, so
Hmm.
that way my brain can also kind of take a break, if that makes
Now,
any kind of sense.
I would like to say, as somebody who grew up in a small town, there
mm,
is what I would personally call the yo yo effect. You
mm,
get people in big cities who haven't necessarily lived in small towns and nature who really are like, yeah, I just need to get out of here, right?
mm,
And some people really do take to it, but the severe majority actually go fucking mad with boredom. A lot
mm,
of people are so used to the constant overstimulation of the city life that small town living bores them to fucking death. Like
mm,
when there's one movie theater and you may not even get the new movies coming in, it's a lot different, you know. And when you're living a pace of life where like when I was growing up in a small town, it's also a little bit different versus nowadays with like Amazon, right? But and like also say like Steam games, right? Because if I wanted a video game, I had to drive 2.5 hours to go to Kelowna to get it, right?
right, to the
And
nearest shopping center or whatever.
yeah, and maybe I was lucky if the Radio Shack in town got limited quantities of a game, and I'd have to check with them to see if they were getting a release, and if they did, I could maybe pre-order one, and if not, well, fuck it, I'd have to chance it and drive to one of several different cities in several different directions, right?
Hmm.
And like I could get shit like food, tools, gasoline, like pretty much everything you need to like survive, but if you're talking about like having fun or going out and getting fancy clothes or like doing things that are like kinky or shit, even witchcraft shops. Fuck, you'd be
Mm.
surprised at how many places in the middle in the rural areas don't have that stuff, and you can't just necessarily go get it, right? So you really are left to fend for yourself and to have to kind of try and meet those kinds of people. And I'll tell you this too, rural magic practitioners are a whole hell of a lot more clammed up than urban ones. Like urban magicians are fucking ludicrously showy. Like people are putting sigils on their hands, they're wearing like apparel, occult apparel, and like
Yeah.
putting their affiliations in up. Man, if somebody's working woo in a small town, you probably have no fucking clue. And
Hmm.
you cross them, and next thing you know, you're having a whole bunch of bad shit happening,
It
right?
is funny because I do understand that actually. That is funny that you say that.
Mhm.
I have noticed that and it's funny because when I was in Salem 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, whatever it was, I was talking to a pretty well known Salem witch who owns her own shop now. Her name's Liamarama, and I was talking to her, and she was telling me about how during the summer that summer previous, she went to New Orleans, and how she was like, if you think Salem is powerful, she's like it's right there. Like people have it like on their like it's on the doorstep. It's like it's hanging somewhere. It's it like the people in New Orleans is just kind of, but it's funny because it's also at the same time different.
Mhm.
It's kind of like it's just accepted that it's there, but no one's necessarily talking about it, but it's in your face.
Mm.
Whereas like, I feel like New Orleans, because it's so old, and although one could say that Philly's old, but it also doesn't have the same history. I
Hmm.
think that
Mhm.
some of the places that are more steeped in, I guess, some form of magic or indigenous tradition, um, you kind of get the culture changes is all I'm saying. Like
Mhm.
Sophia was saying, that's all. Like if you go out into like the more like Dutch country, even there you can see it more. The brow cry and the Dutch powwow and the powwow doctors and stuff like that in
Hmm.
Dutch culture, like that it's more prevalent. Um, and then but that's of course once again that's older. You see the hex signs and all of that,
But
but once you
also,
Mhm.
those groups are usually more based in rural spots, though. They're
Right,
not
right,
really in like those big urban
exactly, and like it's
centers.
just right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is weird, right? And I don't want to dissuade anyone and say, now you're gonna have a shit time in the woods. Cause like honestly, it really might be for you, right? And it is a different day and age than like 25 years ago when I was 6 years old, right? Like you can get a lot of the comforts of modern day life just like shipped to your fucking door now, right? Like even I'm considering moving out of a bigger city and getting back to like a more traditional style of life, right? So like don't just turn away from it with me just being like, ah, you never know, you might go fucking crazy on the border, right? Because
Hmm.
it is for some people, right? But it's a lot more hands on, and it's a lot of fucking work. And even finding those circles, they aren't necessarily in every town, right? So like
Mhm.
for example, I know a coven that's just outside of Ontario. Not Ontario, I always mix up the two. Ottawa, the capital of Ontario. and
Mhm.
and they're in like just this kind of small rural area scattered around Ravens Knoll area. And if you know that name, you know the people, and it's like obviously very obvious, but you have to know that there's a community there to go looking for it to kind of find it, right? So like
Mhm.
if you're just driving through the middle of nowhere and you stop at a small town and expect to find practitioners there, you may find not a damn soul. Because generally if a town's friendly to a practitioner, you're gonna have a few.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. And like you'll have groups kind of popping up everywhere out there because they can really do a lot more serious big style rituals without being observed,
See,
but you
for
Mhm.
also don't have that cloak of anonymity. Like if you are doing a ritual and some people find out locally, you can start some real fucking problems. especially as somebody who grew up in a town which had like a lot of different occult groups in it and practitioners, like you'd stumble across a sacred site, and sometimes you'd have like active remains from like someone's ritual sacrifice there. Like whoever it was in my town who was doing their work had a real thing for killing birds.
Hmm.
And I don't know what it was, but we always found the gore from dead birds when they were doing the shit. So you there's a lot of weird shit that can kind of happen, and you can also get
Mhm.
in like this really freaky mage war with people out there. Like I found on my family's property like this really intense site where people had been doing a working to like trap a land spirit in, and I like smashed it and got rid of it because they shouldn't have been doing that, right? And
Right.
like it's not a walk in the park, you know? It can
Mhm.
be real sketchy out there.
Yeah.
I feel like in this city you don't see as many obvious signs of magical workings. Um,
Mhm.
you,
It's rare.
yeah.
In my youth, I used to stumble upon them more, but that was almost very intentional. Cause like when I was in high school and younger, I like obviously I didn't have as much control over the psychic senses,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just kind of be like, oh hey, I'm being led to something, and I like wouldn't even realize it. I would just trance out and I'd follow it, and like I would be with my friends, and I would just be like, I would stop, and I'm just like staring, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, oh, huh? And I would snap out of it, and there's like a sigil or a paraphernalia of
Mm-hmm.
occult something nature, and they would be like, "How?" And I was like, I don't know, like I didn't have an explanation for it. I would just stumble upon it, but it wasn't
Mhm.
frequent enough to say that like similar. It was actually rather infrequent. So like all those times, the times that it did happen, it was kind of it just had a more sense of eeriness. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
it was
Yeah.
so infrequent.
So that actually entirely depends on the city that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
With Toronto, I cannot tell you how overbearingly packed with magic this place is. Like, you're like, it's you stumble onto it when you're not even looking for it. Like a block and a half from my house, when I was getting food, somebody had tagged with one of those "Hello, my name is" stickers, 156. Like they had done a
Mm.
DKMU tag a block and a half from my house, and nobody in the network even claimed responsibility for it. It was just like some other person who had heard of us and was doing shit on their own, right? Like you come across that stuff all the time, and if you know how to read graffiti and like look at the spaces where it goes on, there is such an active magic current in cities. And that's kind of what I wanted to get down to in the episode, because like we could talk about like all kinds of different things, but the things that really interest me most about urban magic versus rural magic, like in nature, is simply one, how the land spirits differ. Like what you're
Yeah.
working with in the city versus out in nature is similar. Like they're kind of like from the same sources, but they're totally fucking different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
um
for me in personality, in terms of temperament, yeah.
Mhm. And then the other thing that really I was kind of thinking of is people's practices on how they differ. Like
Mm-hmm.
out here,
Mm.
it's a lot more like intuitive, underground, kind of like survival based. And out in the woods, it's a lot more deliberate, cultivated. Like if I was to go out into the woods to do, let me put it this way: if I'm doing a synchronicity walk where I want to find information, find magical items and things, and find magical places, I'm going to walk through Toronto, and I'm going to do the things that I do to start a synchronicity walk by trying to find one of the signs that says discovery walk, give it a little bit of an offering, and then start walking with magical intent, right? Or find a space that deliberately reads the liminal space and start going through it. But even then, I can just be like walking down the street, and like Scott said, something grabs my attention. I walk down a back alley, and boom, I'm in just like this magical place out of nowhere. So, like,
Yep.
cities are kind of like mazes that are constantly folding onto themselves and trying to show you stuff or hide stuff from you. And like it's really justice based. And I don't mean like
Mm-hmm.
legal system based, but there
Yeah.
is like a real thing about the spirits of the streets watching you. And if you're
Yeah.
someone who's like kind and like shares space with people and is respectful and gives change to homeless people, you'll be fine. Man, the homeless people will remember the person that's given them change, and if I don't have change for them, they won't even bother me because they know I'll give them money when I have it, right? They're fucking totally chill. And I bet you if I was getting mugged in my area, the homeless people would fucking come and club the guy upside the head because I'm the person who gives them change every so often, you know? Like,
See,
it's stuff like that.
I want to. I would love to sit here on this episode and say, I give change to homeless people all the time. And the truth is, I don't. Um,
Yeah, it's because it's deliberate. It's not accidental. Nobody carries change anymore. You have to go to the
right.
bank to get money to give to the
I
poor,
mean,
right?
one is really like, I just don't really carry cash. That's just really
Mhm.
the first factor. The second factor is, I don't know if I don't know, maybe Philly just has a different breed of, I don't even know how to put this. Anyway, the people here, they're really invasive. Like
Mhm.
they're angry, and sometimes they will get violent, and it's I hate to say it, sometimes it's safer to just dodge them.
I
Well,
do that sometimes too. Like
we
if a
have to
guy is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well we have to understand, like, Philly has a particular situation that comes from. So a lot of our homeless comes from, unfortunately, I think we've actually briefly talked about this before on a very older episode, but I could say it again, it doesn't
Doesn't a
matter.
lot of our
Uh,
homeless situations stem from our
it,
heroin problem?
that also too. Many years ago, a couple decades ago, there was a big shutdown of a lot of Philly's mental asylums
Yes.
due to
Yes, that is true.
malpractice and maltreatment. And a lot of those people, even though elderly, of course, now or up there in age, a lot of them are untreated mental health patients or ex-patients who,
Yeah.
now have, you know, that live with situations that have, psychotic
They're
features.
just out on the streets with nothing.
Right, and they're, uncared for, and their illnesses are exacerbated by the stress of homelessness. And so our situation is a bit unique here in PA in that regard,
Hmm.
because of that situation uniquely affected the PA area. Just because of, interestingly, PA, I found out, had a thing with insane asylums. Um, we liked, here in PA, we liked to put our insane asylums out on the outskirts of the city, and kind of going more towards the rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we shut them down and just were like, okay, well, we have nowhere for you to go, so leave.
Yeah, exactly. They
And then, of
just
course,
churn
for
them
families
out.
who don't want them, and it was a whole culture of the time. And so that, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Sorry. Just explaining.
No, you're good. And like I avoid someone if they're getting aggressive on the street too. Like I have a really good street sense. I know exactly when to give money to someone and exactly when to leave them the fuck alone, right? And
Yeah,
it isn't even about if someone's faking being homeless or not. I don't give a fuck, man. I'll give
right.
you change. If you need it, I'll really give you change, but like if you're wearing super nice clothes, I'm probably not going to give you as much as the person who's like roughed up and looks like they probably need it, right? But I'm not going to
Yeah.
just like, I ain't giving you shit, you faking. Like, fuck that noise. Like,
Like, I don't
no.
know. I'm assuming Toronto has a subway system, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if this happens on your subway system, but it happens on ours.
I'm just going to
We
tell you yes before you even say it,
Do
but
you
go
get a
on.
whole performance?
Go on. Explain the
Kind of
whole thing.
like they come into the train car and they just demand your good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am blah blah blah, blah. And it's a whole spiel. And sometimes it's a sermon. Sometimes it is just, I'm gonna yell at you until you give me money. Sometimes it's just anger and just, yeah, fuck all you motherfuckers, you know.
It's generally not anger because it's Canada and people will probably respond really negatively to your anger. It's not commonplace like America,
Mm,
but you'll get people with holes in their clothes who really need it going rattling a cup down the thing just hoping somebody will give
yeah,
them money. You'll get somebody like doing their like sales pitch or whatever, you'll get accordion players and like buskers walking down the. Mind you, that was a lot more pre-COVID, right?
Right, yeah.
But yeah, but if you're good to the homeless people who are kind and reasonable, like they'll be good to you. Like they're people, and
Exactly.
and like when
Absolutely.
you treat them like they're people, holy fuck, they remember it. I
Yeah.
promise you, they are not gonna forget your face. If you actually do something that really means something to them, they will remember you,
Mhm.
And
I remember when I was still at PetSmart, um, and I was like, there was this, I don't know what it was, but like this one summer, I was just like, I want to make sure that I give, home. I don't know what I just had this burst of, I don't know. I just was making sure to give when I could, and I remember I saw these like gutter punks
Mm.
living on an alleyway, but they had these two beautiful golden retrievers,
Mhm.
and um, I have my opinions about the gutter punk lifestyle, but just because of its origins and gets pretty classist at times. But
Mhm.
I told them politely. I said this is for the puppies, and I gave them like a lot of quarters. I had like
Mm.
all these quarters from something I don't remember, but they were really chill. They like smiled and were like, "Thank you so much." And like I pet their dogs. I asked if their names were and stuff. It was cool, but that was a nice thing. I also gave it to like homeless people too.
I
Um,
also want to take a quick sidebar and say I cannot stand all the videos that just flood social media of people like I get like people when they film themselves giving to the homeless or to the
oh no, I
poor
didn't.
or
Yeah, I
the
didn't
this.
ever see.
Mhm.
I can't stand that. That is not charity. Like I'm sorry, it's
No,
not charity. It's
that's
you're just
Precisely.
posturing.
exactly. And also the same with those animal rescue videos, because you mentioned the dogs, and I thought of that too. Like I saw this one video earlier. It was like this barn owl like flew into this guy's window and was like kind of shook and paralyzed because it just flew into the window. And this dude, instead of like my instinct would be, oh my god, open the door, get a towel, help the bird, whatever. His was pull out my phone and film it while it's laying on the snowy ground twitching. And he's like, oh, look, he just fell. Oh, I have to help him. Well, why don't you get off your fucking phone and do it?
Mhm.
Sorry, my little
Mm.
tangent there. This shit pisses me off. That's not charity. Do not mistake that as charity and good things, because it's fucking not.
Yeah, or like when there's a social movement going on and then somebody donates to it and then takes a screenshot of their donation and then puts a post on Facebook with it and gives some sort of spiel about giving back or helping out, because then you claim in on your good social capital check and everybody knows that you've done a donation and, oh,
Mm-hmm.
look at you, you're doing the right stuff. Let's give you a standing ovation. It's just fucking ass kissing bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But yeah, anyways, back to the fucking magic.
Yes.
Um, the spirits of the city versus the spirits of nature are very fucking similar. Like, here's one thing I would not make the mistake of. Um, Thinking that a city is safe and nature is not, or vice versa.
Mm.
They are both fucking completely fatally dangerous, but in completely different ways.
I was
Yep.
just gonna mention that. I was just gonna mention safety, and I was gonna ask you something, Sophia. Um, so, all right. So right now, in where I live in Philly, which is not one of the worst neighborhoods, it's on the decline, but it's not one of the worst. Um,
Hmm.
I feel okay sitting outside my house at night. I wouldn't really wander this immediate neighborhood at night, like, just
Hmm.
aimlessly wander around.
Hmm.
Now, I guess I'm just thinking like where you grew up in particular, like the immediate surroundings around your actual house. Did you feel safe there?
No.
No.
Man, in my backyard, we had a moose. And when I
Mm,
was like 8 years old, we got called in because there was a fucking cougar in the swamp behind our house that they had to shoot with a rifle because it was killing people's dogs.
okay, so you lived very, very, very rural then. See, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure like how I guess kind of like close to, like literally nature was your backyard.
Hmm.
Okay.
I didn't have a fence back in the day, and it was just like there was the deck, which didn't even have a fucking railing. You could fall off it. And then there was like the backyard with the gardens. And past that, it was just the dirt road, the forest, and the swamp and the river, and that was it. You
Mm,
know.
right.
Hmm.
And
Now
if
what
critters
about
wandered in, you fucking had to know how to deal with it. You know.
now what about where you live now? Like, like, do you feel comfortable like sitting outside at night,
Oh,
like
I
on your
don't give a
front porch?
fuck, man.
You
I
don't?
don't give a like. Here's the thing. I'm not somebody who like really gets worried about. Ooh, am I in a safe city or in the safe area of the city?
Well,
Because
how
like,
is your
man,
neighborhood though? Is it considered one of the safer
no,
ones or not safer ones?
oh
Okay.
fuck no.
Okay.
But at the same time, nobody fucks with me.
Mhm.
And if they did, I walk around armed. I'm black belt. They're gonna underestimate me. Nobody gives me trouble that I can't handle, right? That's
Mhm.
why I like I could sit out on my front porch with my groceries, smoking my bong, and if someone rolled up to try and do something, unless they have a gun, they're fucked, right?
Right.
So it's chill. And nobody's really just rolling around with guns in cities in Canada, unless you're like really in a rough area. And I've never even seen areas that rough where people are just having shit pulled on them like that without deserving it. And people talk about like getting stabbed in the cities and murders and shit like it's random shit that just happens to anybody. It's like,
Rarely.
no, man, you usually got to do something to get
Yeah.
stabbed. You're
Yeah,
not just gonna like have
mm,
that happen just because like there are like serial killers, sure, and there are like people who target individuals and stuff, but usually like if something like that happens, it's for a reason. And like senseless acts of violence by far out here are like the absolute fucking minority, you know.
believe it
Mhm.
or not, I mean, like that's totally true. Like, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you're involved in stuff where stuff like that is,
Hmm.
the law of the land, if you will, that's kind of you're gonna be met with what you put out in that regard. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um, so like
And
if
I
you're
don't start
involved
shit,
with shady
and I don't
shit,
have
then you're
shit.
gonna get shady shit happening.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so and then 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what it is. At least I think anyway.
And that kind
And
of
like
makes sorry.
I was just gonna say, and like you can get pulled into shit, especially if you grew up in areas through like your friends or associates. Like that
Yeah.
is a real fucking hard deal sometimes. But like shit, even then, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I didn't grow up in this city, but I don't have the same kinds of troubles with safety out here that other people did. Just because I kind of came up from a different ball game, Like for me, safety in the city is like knowing not to go down certain back alleys because that's where drug dealers are going to be doing their shit, and where not to fuck around, and like where certain stuff is. Like it's just it's just like knowing where a lion's den is,
Mhm.
and that's why like when I did like a little bit of time on the streets, like it was fine. Like it was stressful as fuck when people were like being aggressive and shit because we were in like the worst possible area we could be, but like it was still manageable. It's not like I ever had a gun waved in my face.
Mhm. See, I think that's one of the differences here, especially in like just in America as a whole, is that there's no gun control. Let's be real.
Hmm.
There's virtually none of it. So, I mean, yeah, you could just walk into a Walmart, buy a gun, call it a damn day. So literally anyone could have a gun at any point, and that's just that's a thing that's in the back of your mind, like from when you are 3 years old. And I
I'm
guess
gonna be
it's
real honest.
hmm,
If I lived in America, I'd be concealed carry all the time, and I wouldn't even tell anybody.
I have a friend
yeah.
who is, and he only tells people he knows he can trust.
I wouldn't give a fuck. I'd have a snub nose 45 sitting on my thigh every time, and if someone started shit, I'd blast them right in the fucking face.
I mean, I'll be
That's how I was raised.
completely honest. I hate and loathe the idea of especially handguns. I'm like, ugh, ugh. Um, but I am considering getting a gun permit just because of where I live, and I'm like, even me, I'm considering getting a gun permit. What the fuck, you know? And I hate
No,
them.
for real.
Um, but yeah, that is it's just it's a very real um thing that you kind of grow up with. And I guess it's like maybe it's like the urban equivalent of like, hey, you know, if you go out there, there's cougars out there, or there's a bear in the woods. You know, it's like if you grow up in a rural area. And I think that's maybe it in America, at least, that's kind of like the idea is like, hey, anyone could have a deadly weapon on them at any time, so you know, mind your p's and q's.
If you could believe it, I had two customers at PetSmart. Two, they were not with each other at all, but that were always armed when they came in for whatever reason.
Right, it happens. I see so many guns.
I mean,
I
like,
see-
I'm gonna be honest. Um, the reason I'm alive is every time I've been in the woods, I went out armed. Every
right.
single time without exception.
Right.
Be it a firearm, be it a machete, be it an axe. I had something and I've used it to defend my life before.
But you
That's why I'm
see,
here.
right? But that's see that, but also too, that's very distinct. Like I told Darian, I was like, well, it's funny. Me and Darian were just having this conversation today, this morning. I was saying, you know, given this kind of lifestyle that we like, you know, this kind of halfway or home, you know, this homesteading sort of thing that we're kind of getting into. I was like, you know, to do that, it's kind of wise to have a firearm on the property, you know,
Yep.
for animal stuff, you know, and that's very normal, you know what I mean, like. And as much as I talk shit about my sperm donor of a father on here, if there's one thing I know from his upbringing in West Virginia, that's very common for people, you know, raised on farms and farm-like environments where, you know, you're living side by side with wildlife, especially, you know, like the you know the more apexy bears and wolves and cougars and mountain lions and stuff like that. That's very it's not only is it normal, it's smart. You know what I mean?
You're caught with your pants down if you don't have it. Honest to God, like what are you gonna do if you're getting charged by a moose, you know? Are you gonna just hide inside? I mean, you could, yeah, but if you know anything about mooses, they're one of the most territorial animals in existence. So like charge a train head on because it's in their neck of the woods and just die in the process. They just don't give a fuck, you know?
Hmm.
Like if something like that's going after your dog, are you just gonna sit by and watch? If it's going
Right.
after your kid, you're gonna sit by and watch. Or
Right.
if you live in the South and you got a pack of feral hogs, you don't really got a choice other than owning an AR-15. And I know people who are living in this city are like, "Are you kidding me? Did she just say you have to own an AR-15 to deal with wild hogs?" Yeah. When you have a pack of like 30 or 40 of them roaming around, you actually do need a fucking assault rifle to be able to handle that stuff occasionally, right? Like frontier life is still frontier life. Like we got really used to the fact that we grew up in cities for a long time and humanity likes to think that we've evolved outside of nature, but you go back out into nature and, you know, we're part of the food chain still, especially to things like boars that are starting to take over areas where they're like totally invasive now, you know? So like there's a lot of things like that and it's just kind of the same thing in the city, right? The only reason I'm not strapped in Toronto is because one, I know that my hands and a ballpoint pen with my training is more than enough that I will pretty much ever need, unless they've got a knife, in which case I know how to make plenty of improvised weapons. And even at that point, too, I can run real fast and parkour real good. I don't need to get into a fight if I don't have to, right? And the end of the day, it's not about being some big bad person. It's just about being alive, you know? So
That's
So,
true.
concealed carry only seems a
mhm.
necessity because everything is the Wild West down there, because everybody's walking around pointing fucking guns at each other's heads and doing this like wannabe cowboy shit, you know?
So I am curious though, Jay. Why this question? Why did you ask about safety?
Because I keep thinking about ritual, right? And actually doing magic in a city versus a rural area. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grow up in a rural area, but you know, me as in my city kid fantasies about rural life, right? So the idea is like, if you did have a group, if you were fortunate, to have a group of people in your rural area where, you practice magic together, you can go into the woods and be obscured by trees and, and just be away from from people looking at you, from looking at what you're doing. In the city, if you're doing a working like that, we were fortunate that you have a little concrete slab that we call a backyard.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know what I mean?
With
That
high privacy walls.
right, with high privacy walls, and granted, is a concrete box the most conducive to, nature spirits be with us, no, it's not, but it's what we have.
Mm-hmm.
But we were very fortunate that it was, out of the immediate seeing eye. But then at the same time, though, it wasn't, because anyone on their second floor of their
Or look down,
house
and
can
often
look,
did, at
and
least for me.
did, and often said, and sometimes we got comments or whatever, and when you hear, people just being like, oh, what's that fucking, I think when we were drumming, we were doing a little bit of drumming, like people can blast their fucking whatever fucking music to all hours of the fucking night, but
Yeah.
the witches start doing a little drumming in the backyard, and it's like, ah, you fucking rah, rah, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And it's South Philly too, so you got that, just that little
And
South
I was
Philly oomph to it.
right. Catholic oomph. I mean, don't get. I've gotten plenty of times where, the next block over, where people on the side, on our side, apparently, they talk about us, or they did. You
Oh,
know, apparently we were the Satanists. The block over.
oh, it's always
That
Satanist.
happened
It's
once or
always the
twice,
default.
and I was like, okay. I was like,
Well,
well, we're not, so that's cool. Although there's nothing wrong with Satanism, if you want to know about that too, but
get
um,
educated.
that's not what we are exactly. Well, you weren't with what you call it at the time.
Yeah,
You weren't in
Satanic Temple.
Ireland. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You weren't with them at the time. This was a while ago, obviously. But I mean, yeah, they talk, and it's funny because it took me a long time. Not like outside of connecting to the spirits in the city. Outside of that, it took me a long time to be comfortable to, how do I put this? Like to actively just do my magic and not give a shit. Like when I
Yes,
started
that's what
studying,
I'm
like,
talking about. That's what I'm
like
talking
when
about, is like that almost like that stage fright. But when you're
right,
doing
Okay.
a ritual in a
yeah,
public park and you're like, okay, this is like kind of private, but not really. And you're like,
We gotta
okay,
chip in
guys,
though.
let's do it.
I remember,
I know Sophia wanted to say something.
it was, oh, I'm sorry.
Ye- I'm almost scared to say this.
Mm.
You're safe in a city park compared to being out in the woods because it's not people that will watch you out in the woods, it's other stuff. And
Right.
I'm still scared to this day of the things that I have accidentally called out while I was doing rituals in my hometown. And it
I've done
keeps
that
me
in the
up at
city
night.
though.
It keeps me up. I mean, granted, it can happen in the city, but it's just not necessarily like
It's not as visceral.
it's just like not behind every rock or every tree or blade of grass, not just like wanting that land back, just waiting to find somebody out there doing something to grab its attention to come on out to. Like I'm serious. Like you find yourself in the wrong place in nature. And
But
it's not to say that stuff can't happen in the city, but just folks be careful.
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the, see, I will, if I could say this though, when it comes to the city, in my experience, we have a lot of abandoned buildings,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
those abandoned
Mm.
buildings,
Vibrate.
oftentimes, not only they vibrate at a certain frequency, but due to their liminality, but they become houses to a plethora of spirits that don't even all necessarily belong to the same tradition or culture, but
Mm-hmm.
because cities are, like Philadelphia in particular, as that's my experience. I mean, I've talked on here about, meeting, a yokai, because
Mm-hmm.
of traveling along with Japanese Americans that live here. There's, Japanese supermarkets not too far from here. Um, and that was a shocking experience, because it was like, wow, that's not even. You know what I mean?
It's not native to the
And
So
yeah.
here's
right,
another thing
and
I want to
the,
note quickly. American population density is huge, so I guess y'all's cities are completely different. Because how many people are in Philly?
oof.
I will look that up.
Please continue with your story though, Scott. Because I was just thinking about it. Like Toronto's only like 2 million.
uh,
Yeah.
actually,
Um,
oh wow. So, as of okay, so I just punched it into Google, right? 1.579 million 2019. That's for Philadelphia. Population of Toronto.
Oh, we're at 2.9 for Toronto
So you
now.
actually have more.
It's bumped up.
Wow, you have more
Really? Okay.
people. So actually, I think your population density might be higher
In
because your
Toronto,
city's a lot
perhaps, but
smaller.
like Vancouver, which is like one of the next biggest cities, is 675,000, and that's where I was living.
Wow, that's a big
Hmm.
difference.
but to get back to it, what else I was saying was like there's this kind of there's a hostility to navigating the spiritual landscape in the city that I've experienced in the
Yes.
sense that when I said temperament, it was different. Like I've been out in nature, going to the cabin in my father's old cabin in the Hudson Valley. Um that experience was completely different than what I experienced here in the city. And it's not to say that they weren't capable of hostility in the Hudson Valley, but it was so old and so steady. Like
Hmm.
there was no it wasn't high pitched, whereas in the city things are very chaotic. So when I'm doing things in public, although I like to kind of secret myself off somewhere, or at nighttime in like a park, that's closed, and
Right.
hide myself from the police who are patrolling, on the main, whatever's. But
Yeah, like they'll stop, and that's the other thing too is our cops are colossal fucking dickheads. They'll disperse your obvious, totally fine little working that you're doing because you have an open flame because you have a fucking candle or
right.
something. But, they'll just let drug deals just keep fucking happening and all kinds of fucking other bullshit. You know what I mean? It's just, ugh, cops.
Hmm.
I think the most hostile experience I've ever had, and I mean I've had other, like, it's funny because as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that not everything hostile is quote unquote bad.
Mm,
Sometimes things are
yeah,
just, looking for something, or they need something, or like unfinished goals of some kind. But the most hostile that I've ever felt is actually relatively recently. I think once again I've talked about this before too, was driving past Philadelphia's oldest graveyard, or cemetery, excuse me, Laurel Hill Cemetery.
yeah,
It's a Victorian cemetery and it's huge. Um, and the dead, along with everything else that is attracted to the sheer potency of this huge liminal space, um, it radiates. And not to say that it's evil in any way. I don't want to use that word, obviously, but it was
heavy.
you don't belong here.
Mm,
And the spirits in the city are very much well, like you, Sophia. They're very territorial, but they're hard to talk to because
Wait, are you saying
they're
I'm territorial and hard to talk to?
no, the spirit.
I think what Scott meant is like what you were saying about rural spirits.
I'm just
I'm sorry, that's
messing.
not how I meant it. I'm sorry. No.
50 some
Um,
odd episodes later, you're hard to talk to.
Oh
um,
no.
but no, like it's like you said, there are a lot of similarities, but they
Mhm.
take place in different spaces. Like I said, for us, it's the broken down spaces, it's the burnt out houses, it's the
Yes.
the crime scenes. You know,
Oh yeah, y'all got a lot more of those.
like for instance, there was a body found a couple blocks away from me. It was a house people were squatting in, and they found a body cut up in like a dumpstery thingy.
Oh yeah,
And
about 2 months ago,
yeah,
there
like
was a
I can only
body in a
imagine.
trash bag 2 blocks from my house.
I can only imagine what is attracted to that. And you know, how do I put this? We can't erase the historical fact that sacrifice
Mm,
and death causes shockwaves. Violence causes shockwaves in the ethereal realm, and it makes things happen, and not very nice things. Oftentimes it creates a sort of a tear, a rip, and what happens is it generates a rage, and it generates an anger, and the spiritual nature of things here, the spiritual landscape here in the city becomes chaotic. And but that also stretches back to what Jay was saying about how cities kind of never sleep. There's
mm-hmm.
always someone outside somewhere doing something. Um and that's why, like, for me, like I was saying, like, I've been in natural spaces where I know I wasn't supposed, like, there were times, like, I remember I took a family trip um with my father's side of the family many, 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 many years ago. I was a child. um and I remember we were in the mountains somewhere, and I think it was in Maryland. And I remember we were walking around, and there was this area where there were these bare scratch marks on the
Mm,
trees. And it was funny though, because I was like, of course, at the time I didn't understand the relationship between the animal kingdom and the spirit world, but of course that those two worlds are incredibly interconnected. And I couldn't understand why, like, past these kind of three trees where these bare scratch marks were, there was this energy that just was like pushing back, and I couldn't, I like almost physically felt like I couldn't move forward.
mm.
And it felt like there was eyes on me, and it felt like there was, even though like there was nothing around, it was just like literally just off of a trail that was pretty well walked. There was other people on this trail, it wasn't just us. But there still seems to be a level of, like, when I say harmony, I just mean it's steady in nature. Nature doesn't have the same chaos, if you
Well,
will. And I don't.
yeah. So nature. This is kind of how I feel. Nature was it. It is life. You know what I mean? A city is artificial life in a way. Like it's really trying to put this into words, and I'm trying. So like a city is a system, right? Just like how nature is a system. Nature is a perfect system, right? Everything exists in nature for a reason, right?
Mhm.
But in a city, you have to construct all of the elements it needs to function. Does that make sense?
I get it.
Right. So you need plumbing, water, utilities, you need housing, like you need a subway system, you need transit, you need roads. And but nature in and of itself, yeah, it is its own city, if you really think about it. There's it's its own commune, its own system of living things. But that's all just that just came to be. Cities are these man-made,
Organically.
yeah,
Yeah.
organic, yeah.
Things aren't as organic as, I mean, and one, like Darian likes, because Darian hates the argument of like an organic because he loves biology, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as he is concerned, if it's on the periodic table of elements, it's organic, and he's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think we're talking about it in a more I don't know, esoteric sense, or a more
Yeah.
broader sense. Um,
No, but my main thing, what I was really getting at with the whole safety thing is just that it's something about like when you practice magic in a city, and you could try and be as relaxed and into it, but you always, always, always have your ears open, and you're always looking around because you're looking for someone wandering up to you. You're looking for, you know what I mean? You always, I just feel like I can honestly say any ritual that I have done in a public kind of setting in a city, I have never done 100% in. I've only been like 95 because that other 5% is like constant vigilance for what's
yeah,
around me.
yeah. But I get, I also, I mean, wow, there's so many similarities that just come from. Oh, excuse me, I burped. Sorry, pardon, sorry. From
Quick
complete just
pause.
different.
Sophia, are you still here?
I'm
Just
here. I'm just
okay. I just wanted
PTSD rocking back and forth, going, "Be careful what you wish for."
to.
Sorry, but like, I don't know. I actually did have a minute there where I like zoned out and like had a flashback to just like being in the bush at night and like just remembering what it's like and how, oh, it's fucked, man.
See, I'm
Like,
not saying that that kind of thing isn't terrifying. That's not what I'm saying. And the thing is, I've never been experienced to that type. I don't want to say that type of nature. I've always experienced nature in a controlled sort of way. I've never just
Mhm.
been in the woods. Period. I've always been in X campground, X park. That's always what it's
Yeah.
been for me. So I've never just experienced
I guess
visceral raw nature.
it's like this.
Mm,
Nature in specific areas in daytime is great. At nighttime, you best be careful,
Hmm.
especially
right.
at 3 a.m. You
Hmm.
best be goddamn careful. And I don't mean to be like that bitch, but like shit about like stories of stuff in the woods, they're not fucking stories, man, y'all. I've like seen shit. It's real. Um, Other than that though, like there is a profound sense of peace once you've like managed to understand your place in it, right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because like that's the problem is we go out into nature as people who are raised in colonized society and we think we're at the top. We are not at the top. We're not. No. We're caretakers. We have a place. We need to understand that and be respectful because when you don't, like, shit can happen. Like, I'll tell you a short story. I was, and forgive me if I've told this story already on the podcast, but I used to like go on whole day walks in the my hometown. I'd take a friend with me. You never go alone. You're always armed with you when you go to. And you go as far as you can go with like just the food and water that you have. And when you get tired, you turn around and go back, right? Because you don't want to be out past dark. And I've never
Yeah.
gotten stuck or been out past dark. Um I was over here in Toronto going into a tiny park. I'm not even talking like an actual set aside park. I'm talking like just like a part of the city that was
Like you could see
inconvenient to
across it to the
develop.
other side kind of park.
Not quite. No, it was
Hmm.
definitely thicker than that. It was like a part of the city that was inconvenient to develop, sort of thing.
Ah, okay.
And it was like kind of near a park, so they like left it, but like
Right.
I'm telling you, as an experienced woods person, it should not have been a deal, right? And I was going in there to get firewood with someone. I took like, I went ahead 10 feet and they were like, don't get separated. And I'm just like, don't worry, I'm from like uh, the woods, you know? And I'm like picking up trash, trying to be respectful and stuff. And like, I got turned around. Like I had these like white butterflies come out and like kind of grab my attention and I kind of like felt like spun around a couple of times a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
like when I was trying to get my bearings and look back to where the person was behind me, they weren't there. And I started panicking because I tried to walk back and it was a completely different path. And I knew I was not in the part of the woods that I was in before. And I've never been fucking turned around like that in my life. Even out in my woods where I grew up, even though there's stuff out there that like may want to eat you and stuff that demands your respect as part of the natural hierarchy of shit, nothing ever managed to displace my sense of where I was, much less in a fucking fraction of a part, you know? And it was because I had wood experience that I was able to be fine. I was like, okay, calm down. You're in a parquet. Walk in one straight direction. Do not deviate it. You will get out of there at one point and find the edge of the park. I did exactly that and I found the campground that I was at and I had managed to exit the park like 200 feet north of where I had entered and like on the easternmost exit when I had entered at the southwest. So Yeah, you can get some real shit happening real quick, right? Even in a city park, you can get turned around if the land spirits want to really make you aware of their presence and let you know that it is not your woods. It's a
Mhm.
lot different if I'm out by my hometown because I was born there. I was raised there. I grew up there. Those spirits and I, we have a close connection. Like my family lives there, you know? It's a lot different if you're just kind of traveling around and going places and finding yourself another spot like Scott was saying. And like when you were saying you saw the bear claws in the tree, I'm immediately thinking to myself, I'm like, that's a big fucking nope sign right there. And most woods people I know usually turn around right there and then. And it's kind of interesting that when you didn't, you kind of got stopped, right? Because most people would have turned around then, right?
Mhm.
Many people are not too interested in getting to a close quarter altercation with a bear. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, right? But at the same time, I need both. I can't live with just one. Like I can't move out into just the woods. There's not enough stuff there for a trans person. I can't get my hormones really in a small town. There's
Mhm.
maybe not even a doctor there that might prescribe stuff or a healthcare program that has resources for me. You know,
Right.
um,
Mhm.
who's to say the pharmaceutical the pharmacy or whatever even gets like my medication? I don't know, right? So there's a lot of
Maybe
things.
maybe that's I think urban magic, right? I think it kind of sometimes I feel like when you do a working, especially out in public in the city,
Hmm.
you feel really drained.
Ooh.
Sometimes it's a good way. Like, wow, it was great.
Hmm.
Like, it was a good time. And sometimes you're like, no, I'm really drained. Like,
Yeah.
I was doing some work out there, and because I was getting hit from all angles from other shit, or something just, just took it out of me. And I'm thinking, like cities are great, right? They're convenient. You have everything that you can imagine within walking distance usually, especially if you're in a really densely, populated kind of part. So the idea is I can walk out of my house and I can go get milk, I can go, get some clothes, I can go get a new pair of shoes. Whatever I want is at my fingertips as long as I have the money to get it, right?
Hmm.
So, but the price of convenience is what I think about when it comes to cities, and just like, people weren't meant to be crammed together like this. Yes, we're supposed to live in, I fully believe that we were supposed to live in communities because we're very social beings, but I don't think we're meant to live on top of each other like this. I don't think that, we were intended for this. And I think a lot about how queer people tend to be drawn to cities because of access to those things that they need, right? Just like you were mentioning, Sophia, especially if you're trans. And
Yeah.
this has happened in queer history. Like, I'm talking about, like, what? Like, queer history, not just modern times. Um, you know, Queer people have always been drawn to cities, but queer people also come with a lot of pain. I don't know a single queer person who doesn't come with some level of pain and hardship and
Hmm.
trauma, like a
Mhm.
scar. We all have scars. We all have really deep scars. And that is just some of the energy of the city. Like, the city can be so beautiful because you're bringing, you have people together. You can access things, and you're with like people. It's easier to find people like you.
And that's a big reason why. That right
Right.
there is like one of the biggest reasons too.
But
Is
that pain just
finding.
radiates in a city, and it's also
Mhm.
very sad.
I think queer people understood even from a long time ago that we survive by coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I have some issues these days with the idea of like LGBT community only because we are severely fractionated.
Yes.
Groups within groups and those groups fight with other groups and they fight with themselves.
Honestly, I think it's socioeconomic status at this point. It depends where you fall.
that's a big problem. Yeah, that I mean, there's tons of problems. I mean, there's hundreds of problems.
Yeah.
Intersectional problems abound. But like, you know, simplistic, for simplicity's sake.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But in general, the idea is being somewhere where you can find like-minded people. Like I actually, when I was away for Valentine's Day, as I was telling you both before we recorded, um, I actually said to Darian on our way to the bookstore, I said, it's really nice seeing all these queer people just living their
Mm-hmm.
life. You know, it was just really relaxing. Like I
Right.
actually kind of like I felt my shoulders like when I realized it's like I recognize that my shoulders kind of like dropped. You ever have that when you're
Yeah.
super tense and they just woof. And I realized that they did that and I was like, "Oh man, like clearly that means something." You know what I
Yeah.
mean on a deep level, you know? So I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? I get that, you know, I don't know.
But I think that's
Mm.
where the draining energy comes from with cities, is that, while you're doing your workings and your magic, the energy pull, like when you pull from the energy of the city itself, right?
Mhm.
You're pulling all of its beauty and all of its this and all of its that, but you're also pulling all of the pain that it holds. And you're
Yeah.
using that pain as energy for sure, but damn, are you tired after you use it for so long?
But
You
it's
know,
but
sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I mean, I was just gonna say it's funny though too because like once again, like there are places like I have other like friends who live more rurally, who have talked about, I have a witchy friend who talked about they found a barn and this barn they said it like consistently bad shit just seemed to happen there.
Hmm.
Ooh.
And it was always just this place of misfortune and if it wasn't people who worked on it, some guy fell off and hurt
Right.
himself and couldn't work. Like it just was misfortune,
A series of unfortunate events.
mysteriously it was just excessive. And there was a couple suicides there, and like they, of course, come to find strange, through digging around and like I don't know if it was the hayloft or what, but they found strange hex like paraphernalia. Uh, and it's even in nature, like I just think that the obstacles are different. The how we go about things is different, but the experiences remain the same. Like Sophia is frightened, if you will. I don't want to say you're frightened by. You're
I'm
generally not scared of
traumatized.
much. Okay, traumatized by the
A
mountain
wild.
lions that could be sneaking up
I mean, I
behind her.
love it. I love it too, and I'm getting
Of
back into
course,
it. I'm just remembering the dark side to it because you gotta
right.
honor both regards.
Absolutely. And Jay and I, we remember, we think about, the crazy zealot who is kind of like, Satanists shouldn't live, and I'm gonna attack you in the middle of the
Yeah,
street
or
because
the
you
time I've
offend
been cornered on buses and trains and,
because of your pentacle, right?
yeah. Yeah.
For me, like how many times in high school
Mhm.
walking around with, I mean, granted, I had a larger pentacle than I do now. I
Mhm.
purposely downgraded only because I didn't feel like I needed a larger one anymore.
Yeah, I have a
But
little tiny one.
and so many times people would cross themselves, or they would give me bad looks, or how many times people would tell me, "Oh, you're a Satanist," to my like they felt they needed to tell me that I was evil. You know,
Mhm.
um,
They went out
I
of their
remember
way to let you know.
right, like I remember one time this woman made it really awkward. I was sitting doing a witch's ladder. I just didn't feel very safe. The
Mhm.
train just felt very hostile. Not that anything was happening, but like that
You
it's
felt the
very common.
vibes.
There was just a really heavy ugh. So I was and I had a piece of string with me. Witch life, right?
Mm.
Just a random piece of string and or cord rather. And I was like, okay, well let's tie up some protection, and I by knot of one, and I was doing that and this older woman caught me and she kept staring at me as she's trying to knit, and eventually she puts her knitting away and she takes out a rosary, and she's like kind of staring at me, and she starts praying, and I'm just kind of like, I'm not doing anything to you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
contrary to popular belief,
It ain't about you.
it's like, I'm not after you. Like, I don't want to eat your baby. I don't want to, like, I don't care. You know what I
Right.
mean? But you make me start to want to curse you. Like, when you do that shit, it's kind of like, well, maybe I should curse your rosary. You know what I mean? Like, you're pissing me off, you know? Like, and the thing is, like, I don't mean to be a dick, but like, stop, you know? And don't pray at me, because where I come from, that's magical warfare.
Right.
You know what I mean? Um, and it's like, as I've said before, as I've said before, like, you don't want to play that game with me. You know what I mean? Because
That's
one of
true.
us is winning, and it ain't gonna be you. Um, but you know,
um Sophia, before we go any further, you wanted to talk about the dark part of
I was gonna say actually, I had been talking about the dark part of
Mhm.
small
hmm
towns,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in retrospect, oh, I got to preface too. I grew up in a really fucked up small town,
Mm.
and like
Wasn't like
the
a
other
happy
part,
small town.
no, no. I mean, like certain spots and times, yeah. But it's also like high weird,
Mm.
right? Like
hmm
I haven't had shit happen like that pretty much anywhere else my whole life. Like there's
Well,
other
you
small
said
towns
that
I've been in, like Nelson,
you
that's great.
you were saying, I think you mentioned in a previous episode, you said your town was a little bit like, I don't know, like a little bit like Riverdale from Sabrina, like how just weird
Yeah,
shit happens there.
it is pretty much exactly like Riverdale from Sabrina.
yeah.
Yeah.
Highly relatable show for you.
Yeah.
Greendale, by the way.
Let me put it this way: I
You ever
don't
look-
watch what's it called, Supernatural, because it feels like it hits too close to home. And what were you saying, Scott?
Oh, I was saying Greendale. Riverdale's the town
Greendale.
Oh, my bad. It
Yeah.
is Greendale. The other Dale.
Mhm.
over.
You know, I'll say this actually. The woods that I got lost in the city was actually called Riverdale.
Wow.
That's weird.
Yep. Mhm.
There is
Well,
an
you
arc in the
also
comic.
mentioned. Sorry.
Sorry, there is an arc in the comics where Greendale does become an epicenter of the supernatural. So.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
cool.
hmm
Oh, but yeah, no, like my small town was really messed up, and it's not like all of them are like that. Like there's some plenty of folks who have peaceful small town life and good relationships with nature because they live in areas that aren't fucking cursed because they were never supposed to have people live in them.
Right, right. And that I've noticed is like a really big issue. Like, is kind of our disrespect. I sometimes think that that's why cities can be really hostile, because like when
It's
I'm
just the
traveling,
utmost
when I'm
disrespect to the land. It's just the
and a
most
lot sometimes
disrespectful
it's
thing you could
excess.
do is build a fucking city on it.
I understand why we built cities.
Yeah.
Whether I agree with them or not the point. I understand why. The thing that I don't understand about cities is the excess.
Mm.
Is the progress for progress sake, the industry, and we have these disgusting, horrible warehouse districts. How many times did I walk past the one going towards the movie theater in South Philly, where the Titanic sister ship is and all up
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
I walk there from my house sometimes, or we used to go to AC Moore when it was still open, and I would get headaches because there's like a plastic factory or something,
Mhm.
and it gives me horrible headaches, migraines. I even got a migraine a couple times, just from inhaling its fumes. Like, cities are excess. They represent the excess of our species, and a lot of the time I think that that's why I have such a difficult problem. Like, when I'm in nature, like, even there, like, I remember I got to my dad's cabin and I fell asleep, and this spirit of this woman, now I don't know if it was a human woman, me and Sophia had this conversation before, her connections to nature were pretty significant, and it didn't necessarily look like as far as how she presented herself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember how very okay she was with me because of my awe of the beauty of the land and my desire to, or would be desire to protect it. It was felt by them. They understood that I had no ill intention.
Mhm.
Um, and they were able to see that in my mannerism and my disposition and whatever clairvoyance that they may possess. Um, and they were willing to just be like, you know, hey, what's up? And I remember I talked to them and I told them, hey, like, I told them what was up. I was like, I don't have the best relationship with my father, but he's really sick and I'm not a monster. I don't want him to fall and die, in a
Mm-hmm.
cabin in the woods. So I said, if you could just keep an eye on him and maybe let me know, uh, you know,
If something
because
happens.
all of nature is connected, so they could get to me here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were like chill with it, and to make it even to show you that they listened. My father said he was seeing little impish men-like beings, um, checking on him through his windows.
Huh. Wow.
Yep.
That's creepy.
And like that was how like okay with me they were. Like I remember I was standing there just doing a house blessing and I opened my eyes and there were gnomish like people in the living room just
Hmm.
like what's up, and I was like, hey guys, you know and like it wasn't hostile. They were curious. I mean, they weren't my friend immediately, but they were chill and it was easier to talk to them for
Mm.
me. um but there is something, but once again we have to remember too that it's a landscape. It's distinct habitats and what would you call it, like like how like there different places have their own weather climate, like
Mm-hmm.
climate,
Mhm.
climate and weather are not necessarily the same thing. um Certain things, just the spirit world has its own climate, if you will, in different places. And going to the Hudson Valley and its connection to native lore, and how like you could tell, even as I sat there, like I could feel the rage of the ancestors in the land, you know kind of how very white and conservative
Mm.
the Hudson Valley became, when that in all of the Hudson Valley belonged to natives.
Mm-hmm.
All of it, there is not a part of it that didn't belong to native people. And when I'm there, I'm like, there's not even a black person when I'm there. Like it's
Mm.
white. It's just a sea of whiteness. And and even that, it's hateful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I talked about what they did to the Halloween house, where they burnt it down.
What?
I think I talked about that. Did I talk about that on the podcast?
I don't think so.
Oh, so there was a guy in Poughkeepsie where my father lived, where his cabin was. And I didn't know about this, but there was this really old historic Victorian home. And this gentleman in his youth used to have the Church of Satan and local Wiccan groups
Mm.
um, from New York. They would all go up to his house. He would let them have seances and ceremonies.
Oh,
He would
okay.
let them have moots and meetings. And a couple, however long ago now it was, uh, a neighbor decided to drench the entire house, the first, the first floor in gasoline, and you know
Torch it.
whoosh, the whole house went up in
Oh,
flames.
that's
And it's an old
awful.
Victorian home, so a lot of this house can't be restored. But that's the nature of and of course, like, not to like deviate from the inherited pain of native tribes, but even like what I was trying to get at was difference. The thing that also made it worse is that the man that owns that house now was a gay man, a very feminine, very queer gay man. And difference, and like I can imagine why there is this anger, this rage in the land. But for me, it was easy for me to cross into that because I had no ill in my heart
Mm-hmm.
towards them. I did not feel any different from them. I felt similarly. You know what I mean?
Right, because you were angry with them.
Right. and that became apparent the more they understood, you know. And I went there saying like, hey, I'm not trying to intrude on your space, I'm just here visiting. I'll be going back home to the city. Like, I told them my timetable, like I let them know my entire, you know, reason for being there. Um and that was easier for me. um and that, of course, you know, my father was like, you know, be careful going down past the lake. um there are, you know, mountain lions and stuff like that. Um, and of course, of course, I respected that space. Of course, it was also really difficult to get to because of the river.
Mm.
It made, you had to kind of pass this part of the land that was like dry. It was so the soil was so wet that it was
Mm-hmm.
always mud. You know what I mean? Because the
Mm-hmm.
river. But you know, I didn't tread in that space because not only did that space belonged to the to beavers and wild cats and all sorts of animals, raccoons and the skunks and everything else kind of lived in that space. That was the animal space, you know. I stayed in my space, you know. Because I went down there once and I was like, this ain't for me, you know. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't mine, you know what I mean? Because there was poison hemlock on the edge of a natural pond. And I was like, I went over to it and I was like, hey, can I have this? You know, I asked him the spirit and the plant. And even the plant was like, I don't belong to you. And I was
Mm.
like, I am sorry. Have a great day, you know? And I just politely was like, let's go back up. And I didn't say anything to anyone, but we went back to the cabin. You know what I mean? I think a lot is, like Sophia said, it's kind of learning to respect the land. Um, a little fear is good because it keeps you alive in nature, but respect and understanding your place in the world around you, and understanding like my understanding of the city and its excess, you know, like I hate that about the city.
If
I
I
hate
could
it.
just also chip in, like, I mean, as we all know, like, all of the land was native originally, but I think why those areas hurt so much is a lot of spaces where like a lot of stuff. I don't know about American history too well versus like Canadian, but like up here a lot of stuff was set aside for like settlers to have specific areas, right? Like there was like rules and agreements, right? And have it go from being like guests on the land to like actively destroying people to like forcing them into concentration camps that are called reservations to
Mm-hmm.
then like trying to take away that like stuff that's even guaranteed to them by treaty rights and like force condos and developments in it and like uh, kick them off of the land that the last scrap of what they have. That's why it's so angry. Is it's not just like one slap on the cheek. It's like one after another for like, I mean, since 1492, right?
Right.
You know, so it's been a long fucking time. And I think that's why certain areas are more raw and have more pain to it, right? Because like my hometown was traditionally a sacred area and people were just not supposed to fucking live there. But it didn't it happened that when colonizers came through, I think they established a road through the area first, and it was like a small little settlement. And they had like Doukhobors from Russia come in and settle the place, and whatnot. And the town's burnt down like fucking twice and had like flood that devastates it, and it's just subject to constant shit. And you think the people would leave, but they don't, right? And you could look at the area of like Kelowna in the Okanagan Desert, where like it was supposed to be reserve lands, and they stole it and fucking subdivided it and put in like housing, and the spirits are just fucking angry, and people have like real intense sightings out there, you know. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's like kind of where it comes from, you know, like land that's been respected, land that has not had its people butchered and displaced and horrific things done to them. It tends to be a lot more chill. And like in certain parts of Canada, it's still unceded land. And as much as they want to say that like, oh, you know, everything from Vancouver Island to Prince Edward Island is crown land, but no, fuck that. Like there's a lot of unceded territory, and there's a lot of illegitimate claims going on with the Canadian government trying to like say that like British Columbia is British Columbia when like pretty much all of that's not theirs, right? So you can go to certain parts of BC and the land's really fucking happy because there's no colonizers that have gone in there and like extracted the resource and devastated the water table, you know? Like they might have like visited the area, but they haven't like absolutely fucked it to the nth degree, right? So it depends where you are. There are some really good places where like it just warms my spirit to be there, you know? Um, and I think that like when you act as somebody who's trying to protect the land and work with the people who have been displaced and understand like your role in that, even as a mixed person, you know, like I'm part of my ancestors fucked up native people too, and I'm responsible for that as well. So like
Mm-hmm.
it's just doing work at this point, you know. And when you're on that side, it tends to work out for you, you know, like as much as I've seen spooky stuff and it's scary, like I go
Absolutely.
crazy without being on the land, you know. And as much as I like love that I can get things in the city, like it's like very much like a positive energy and a negative energy thing for city magic and nature magic to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't view positive as good and negative as bad,
That
right?
right, right.
But like in the woods I can find I can go get like birch bark or cedar or like lavender or stinging nettle or like fuck so many different uh
Mm.
plants and herbs that I can find or I can hunt or I can like dig a well, like start camps. There's so many things I can do, but like can I get metals out there? No, probably not. And if I need to get like tools and things, like wandering through the city, I can get like magical fucking artifacts that I just find in the street. It's one of my great talents that I do. I like just find stuff through synchronicity walking. It doesn't work the same way in the woods. I might find like animals. I might find like sacred spots where I get like messages and it's a very spiritual direct thing, but it's not necessarily going to work the same way. And I find that like if I don't have both, I'm sad, you know? And even though cities are way too fucking busy, I don't think that that is like how they have to be. That's just a feature of how they are now. Like we had
I
mentioned
agree. I was gonna say
cemeteries before.
I would actually love if all three of us could ever visit like a super like a green city, right? Like a really like
Mm.
a reimagined green city. I know they're out there and I would love to go
They
to
do
one.
exist. There's
Mhm.
one a really popular one in Florida
Ugh, Florida.
somewhere. Yeah, they're like their state government is the Green Party. I don't remember what it is. Christian told me.
Hmm.
Mhm. Um, one thing I was gonna say though, with like cemeteries, for example, when I'm in a city, I don't realize how much constant background noise there is. It's not even noise, it's like pressure. And I
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
don't even realize it's there, right? But when I go into a graveyard, it's one stupendous kind of magical liminal space, and I don't know what the fuck it is, but past those threshold and I
All
me
the noise
knocking 3 times and I
disappears.
go in there, yep, it is gone. And
Yep.
it is just holy shit.
That
And
is
I am at peace in a graveyard. I just like take off my headphones that I all have on 24/7 to just block out as much as I can, and I can just walk quietly for hours, you know.
mm-hmm.
And it's completely different, and it's like what's going on there. Well, the energy, right? All the people who are there are dead. They've been laid to rest. It's their final resting grounds unless something else should come. The other people who come either come for a peaceful, quiet, no ill intent walk. Maybe a witch is going there to get some supplies. No judgment here. Maybe somebody's tending to their grounds. There's no real exchange of money going on.
No,
I
you
mean,
have your
sure,
occasional teens drinking behind the gravestones, but about it.
Yeah, and like sure graveyards are a business, like don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
like the funeral business is fucking brutal. But like past the point of burying, it's calm,
Hmm.
and something like that, I don't know if it's necessarily able to take that and extrapolate it onto a bigger model and still have it be a city. But there's got to be something you could do to make a city more peaceful, Like,
I
even
think,
if we understood how to magically insulate shit,
yeah, and I think that's kind of where people are going with green cities. Like this idea that nature doesn't have to be separate from the city, it can be a part of the city. Cities
Like
can be
Vancouver.
walkable. Yeah. Like cities can be walkable. It's
Mhm.
ideal if they are. Like, we can have much more green spaces. We can have more, renewable energy sources. Our waste product, the excess that you were talking about, Scott, like we can turn that into energy to fuel the city itself. So,
Right.
it's just we have to think about it differently. And I don't know if I don't know, Philadelphia itself, because that's the city I know the most. I don't know if Philly will ever go that route. Knowing what I know, probably not. Philly will look the same, probably.
I mean, no, I don't know. I mean, I feel as if we're trying
Yeah,
sometimes.
I feel like we're always trying. I think that's the thing with
Yeah.
Philly, or maybe just being a city witch, is you always feel like you're trying,
Hmm.
but
I
sometimes
I
you never feel like you're thriving.
Oof.
I will say, yeah, I mean, but we all know that I feel that. I've
Mm,
talked about this enough, right? But like ever since I've like last year when I started gardening, when I kind of brought like when I intentionally incorporated nature into my living space, it helps me out a lot. It really helped me to kind of bring a more rural like energy to my space. Um, I really do wonder sometimes if the problem is that there's not enough green in the city, like you said.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Um, because like when I go out there, there is this sense of peace and calm. And before my garden, which of course is obviously all dead now, it's all like winter, whatever.
mm-hmm,
Um, but before, like in the city, I don't know how it is in the more rural areas, but um, things like energy itself just rides the wind. Like you could get hit in the face with like a blast of a breeze, and all of a sudden you're like completely off balance energetically, and you know you're just like, god damn it, what hit me you
mm-hmm,
know um and now when I go out there, it's not like that. Bringing in kind of greenery, it kind of creates a balance.
mm,
um and maybe that's what I'm trying to get at. Maybe it's that I just don't think that cities are as balanced as nature itself is.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the energies, it's kind of like it's like limbo in D&D.
mm-hmm.
Energetically, where like rock is kind of becoming liquid, and sand is becoming lava, like
Because
it.
what it is that cities favor the elite, right?
Hmm.
Cities
Mhm.
favor the predators.
Right.
Nature favors nothing because it's
Nature
one
favors
cohesive system.
groups. Nature
Mm.
absolutely favors groups.
Mm.
Right.
Like if you're gonna survive in nature, you need people. Like you can't you like out here money is what wins, right? In nature, it's numbers. Like even if you had one person with you, if you get rolled up on by a pack of wolves, oh, you can still be fucked if you don't have the good level of firepower. Like even that's what I was talking about, like the feral hogs down south, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they roll around in packs of like 30, 40 because it makes like a big fucking difference if you're fighting a whole herd, right? So like that's the one thing I wanted to kind of mention too. Like a lot of people who want to move out into the woods kind of have the whole urban myth of like just gonna move out and do it by myself. But like
Yeah.
nobody ever did that in all of history pretty much. Like granted there were the lone people who'd move away from groups to go survive by themselves, but dear god they already understood how to do that usually ahead of time, and if they didn't they
Mm-hmm.
are the exception not the rule. Like
Mhm.
people grew up in nature in groups. You learn to do all the skills that you needed to survive in it, being taught by your grandparents and your parents and your aunts and your uncles and your community. And you'd be taken care of by your community in nature the same way you would here, except it'd be a whole hell of a lot more just because the community is accountable to the community, you know? It's it's a completely different way of living a life, and
And you don't get
I
that in the
think
city. You kind of just get thrust into a city, and you're like, okay, figure out where you belong.
in city you have the rule of violence. Actually, I was reading about it, or actually watching a video on it earlier today. Whoever can have a monopoly of violence essentially rules the city, or government in general. That's how they work, right? They have a monopoly on violence. That's essentially what the police and the army is, right? You can't out violence them. They will violent you the most, and that's what makes them the big boys, right? And that's just kind of like the rule of thumb. And if you're not necessarily like warring against each other out in nature, it's just the rule of the community, not the rule of the stick, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. And to get back to the whole like uh being in a green city, like Vancouver is a very green city. That's really what I miss about being in it. Like when you walk down a street, there's trees that form a canopy over it, so there's shade so the pavement's not baking. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. That's just like you would think it's so intrinsic and just basic, and that's how stuff should work, but it just doesn't. Because the city sees trees as threats and damage because their roots can damage irrigation systems and sewer, and as they grow and they heave up, they can wreck roadways and stuff. And
Mm.
trees are a constant investment and cost for the city to keep in. They have to keep up with any canopy branches falling that might snag people's property or hit like overhead lines. Like trees are a great deal amount of work just to keep in a city, just because of how much city infrastructure requires it to just dominate the nature around it, right? Because we still haven't really learned to find a way that is cohesive and harmonious. We're still very much running a us over top view model of society, and that's kind of what makes cities so rigid and inflexible, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's constantly trended away from green space. um that and things like if you live in neighborhoods where they want to police you more, they cut down all the fucking trees so they can just fly a helicopter over and see everything. That's why poor neighborhoods don't have any trees.
Mm.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Damn.
Didn't know that one? Yeah. I there was a certain thing you can look it up about how they did it in the States to a lot of poor black communities. They would just go in and take out like all the vegetation that people could potentially hide in, or it could be used to create cover. And then what that also does is it greatly increases the heat in
Yeah.
those areas, and then also lowers the air quality. And it's like a big snowball effect of negative things that they're doing all at once with that, right? So it's just one of those things where like racism and classism ties into like green spaces in ways that you just still wouldn't expect, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at we have a new shopping center here, relatively new. It's called Sprout, and it's really expensive, but apparently like everything is, organic and green, and it's like Whole Foods, you know.
Well,
I
your
don't know if you have Whole Foods.
neighborhood is being gentrified where you're
Mm,
at. Yeah.
well, it's not really in my. It's more towards. Well, unfortunately,
It's
Sophia, you won't
creeping
know, but
over.
it's right across the street from Kappa, Jay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I'm saying
So
it's
it's
creeping over
interesting.
in your area because you have
A little
houses
here and
like
there, yeah.
yeah, because you have row homes that are going for like 100 grand, and then you have but right next door is like a row home going for like half a mil. So, you know, your area is definitely being gentrified. So you're gonna definitely start seeing that kind of stuff starting to pop up. And that,
Mhm.
I mean, gentrification, that's a whole other, thing to get into. Um, but I kind of wanted to wrap this up. We've been talking for a while on this, and I am sure that this is a topic that we will, definitely revisit. But
Mhm.
just for my own little concluding kind of statement on this, um, I kind of want to just kind of put this out there. Um, Sometimes, especially in the Tradcraft community, and even sometimes the Wiccan community, I see, um, don't think that because you're a city witch your magic is less, or it's not as powerful, or it's not as potent, or it's not as
Mhm.
this, because you don't have as much access to, raw nature, raw land, or
Mhm.
whatever. That doesn't mean shit. It's just a different experience. Cities have so much power in them, and you just have to tap into that. Magic is all energy. Magic is not just trees and flowers and plants. It is palpable energy that surrounds you and the cosmic glue.
Mhm.
So I just want to drive that home. And if anyone ever tells you otherwise, that oh, you don't do your rituals out in nature, naked under the full moon, you tell them, fuck you. Okay,
You just drink a
seriously.
bag of goat piss.
Yeah.
Ew.
So that's my little soapbox concluding statement at the end there. Um, any other concluding thoughts on this kind of
No,
kind of
I
wrap
think
this up?
I think I really feel that. Like I was saying, like I
Mhm.
need both city and woods. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
positive and negative energy. And if you think you don't like negative energy, then oh boy, just go stand in a fucking furnace for forever and tell me how much you like it when it's not cold at all.
It. I will say it. For people that have a hard time, like I did, just lean into it instead of trying to like chase another feeling. Like lean into the city for those of you kind of in the
You
city.
struggled for a while.
I really did. I really did. It was difficult for me because I we know how I practice. We know the kind of things that I connect to really well, and it was difficult to figure out how to make that relate to living in the city. And only up until very recently did I really, really, really start to I get it now and find the flow.
Mhm.
So, just really lean into that experience, lean into the discomfort, lean into this disconnect. And when you do that, when you lean into it, you're going to find that it just suddenly sparks into life and you're going to be like, oh, I get it. So that's, I guess, how I would end it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that concludes this discussion. So yeah, I guess we will see you all in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Make sure to carry an emergency kit if you're going into the woods and bring a weapon.
Yeah.
And maybe GPS.
And always stay observant when you're on the streets. Always watch your surroundings.
Constant vigilance.
Fuck banishing! You wanna punch God in the dick? Sorry, not God, the demiurge.
Mitch
I don't know.
McConnell, sure.
Mitch McConnell? No. No.
Nah, he's just a motherfucker.
Oh.
He's another one on my fucking list.
She... By the way, Rush Limbaugh died.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
I don't care. Me and Darian were dancing.
I mean, let me show you the video my friend posted on DKMU as soon as it happened.
You know who I wish it was though? I mean, all good for, him too. I'm glad he's gone. But you know the 700 Club guy?
That fucking dude.
I want him to die really bad. And when he almost did, I was like, come on. I was like, I know you fucking evil spirits don't want him, but we want him gone.
Okay, with who?
The 700 Club.